Well, this is Dateline News and Conversation coming to you live from Yalta in the Crimea of the Russian Federation. The show tonight is going to be about the politics in Denmark. It's going to be about rampant Russophobia in Denmark. It's going to be about Denmark has been sending financial aid and military aid to Ukraine. We're going to explore all of that. And we're going to talk a little bit about Trump's visit to China and his meetings with Xi Jinping, and whether or not the Chinese are going to take him out beside the woodshed. My guest tonight is a dear friend. He's been living in Denmark for many years. He's an outstanding author and journalist. He's been an activist for all of his life, and he lived and worked in Cuba, Nicaragua for many years. My guest, Ron Ridenour. Welcome back to the show, Ron.
I'm glad to be back.
Well, I am so happy to have you back. And I want to start out with you describing the political situation in Denmark, especially the rampant Russophobia. And Denmark's been giving Ukraine financial and military aid. Tell me, how the heck is that possible? What happened to Denmark?
Yeah, well, earlier, some time ago, we've had a couple, 3 programs about Denmark, and we talked about some of the earlier years in this war. But to give a quick overview, the Danish government are proud to say, and they tell us off and on that they're the number 4th country in the world in giving money and weaponry to Ukraine. Out of the 57 countries that have given money and weapons, Denmark is number 4, but it's number 1 in its funding to the war per capita. And all the figures will be confusing, but it's the Danish taxpayer, including myself, pays 4.5 times as much money per capita than do you in the United States. Well, you're not in the United States any longer, but those who are watching from the United States, they went from 1.3% of their GNP for NATO. NATO wanted 2% at that point some years ago. Trump wants now 5%. Well, they've tripled it. They've got up to close to 4%, 3.5% a couple of months ago. And they've given in all $13 billion. Now, their leadership, Mette Frederiksen and others in the government, see themselves as all the years with Biden's war as the greatest friend you can have. And what was the name? Bert Sanders, said that this was the greatest socialist country and has socialism. Well, it's a totally
we're waiting for Ron to come back into the show. Something happened there where he completely disappeared.
Yeah.
And
hello?
I was really kind of surprised that
I'm here.
Denmark is number one per capita
Yeah.
in giving money to Ukraine. And there you go. You're back. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's something perhaps on this end. Yeah. Well, that's just the beginning of it. Yesterday, for example, they celebrated. Rather, yesterday they had military exercises on the island and around the island of Bornholm. Now, that's the closest. That's in the Baltic, the Eastern Sea, and they say, and the Polish government is the most one of the most rearmament countries in Europe, along with the United States. I'd rather Denmark and Germany. Well, there are several, but the Poles are really wanting to kick ass in Russia. Now, they have a program every week on the war in Russia, and they have military experts and and military advisors talk about where Russia and Ukraine are, and they show the exact lines and who is in what dugout and the next dugout, and all this artificial insemination or artificial intelligence, and they say they're losing. They say actually the Ukraine is hitting back so much and damaging Russia every day, and also in the Crimean, not at Yalta, but close by, and at least Russia will not be able to win. Now, at the same time, this same week, they are having the first national Be Prepared Week in Denmark's history, and this is all about the Russians are coming. That when earlier, before the media here started saying that Russia was not win the war, the assumption was that at some point it would, and that's why they wanted to go on 2 years more. So after the Okan for Hungary lost the election, so now they're putting in $90 billion for 2 years. So they're hoping that we'll go on for 2 years so they won't invade. But now Denmark's media and the military are admitting that Denmark is not going to be, that Russia won't be able to win. At the same time, they're escalating. They're having the maneuvers in Bornholm, which I just said. Now they're having schools and unions preparing people for the Russians to invade. This is can you see here? This is a part of the Beredscape. That's like be prepared, and calling people out to and part of be prepared is to fill up, your cellar and find all the food and water you can, and dig shelters or find shelters. I wrote a letter to the unions that are backing this, and I say, you are you're having a warmonger's mentality, and you're spreading these lies about Russia, that there's no evidence that Russia is preparing to invade Europe, and they clearly cannot. I mean, they are hurting. Part of this is that the Iran war, the Ukraine war, all these wars are now eliminating that the genocide against the Palestinian people. That's just doesn't exist. But Denmark is supporting the genocide. They sell Danish weapons to Israel and buy Israel weapons even while the war is going on. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Am I talking to myself?
No. You're keep going. I just
okay. I'm sorry.
I just and let you go, but let me just jump in if I can.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fear mongering all across the EU and in Denmark about Russia and Russia's impending attack on all the states in the EU.
Yeah.
And I just want to jump in and say that's totally outrageous, ludicrous, and a bold-faced lie.
Yeah.
Russia has no need for anything from Spain to Denmark to Finland to the Baltics. There's no resources there that Russia needs.
Yeah.
And they need Russian gas and oil.
Yeah.
And so it's totally outrageous for these people to think that Russia has a reason for going to war with them. But Ron, I will add this. Russia does have a reason for going to war against them because of the rise of fascism, the Nazi ideology. It not only in Berlin, in Germany, but in several of these other countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Poland.
Poland.
Ron, that's what's frightening about this, that Russia during World War II ended the Nazi threat by defeating the Nazis and by arriving in Berlin, and in large part were responsible for winning that war at the expense of 27 million people. So these Europeans, at least the leaders, but we don't hear much from the people. At least the leaders have all become autocrats, have all become rabid warmongers and Russophobes, and it's really frightening. And Ron, because of what they're doing, because of this Russophobia, because of their public expressed plans to remilitarize, to divert more money away from social programs to their military. There's even talk of, forget NATO, we want to build our own EU army, which is totally ludicrous. And yet, I've been saying this for several years now. It's a Latin expression, si vis bellum, para bellum. Translated into English, if you want war, prepare for war, and you'll get it. Ron, pick it up from there.
Yeah, well, I just read a poll here today or yesterday that one fourth of the Danish population, and only 1/4, want Ukraine to pay back what's now a loan. I mean, they gave $13 billion, which is a lot of money in Denmark. But now the latest monies, the 90 billion, which Denmark is a part of that, is supposedly a loan. Now, on the queue, so to speak, they know that Ukraine really doesn't have the money. So they say that Russia will repay this loan when the war is over, because they will have to make restitution. I mean, and how anybody can believe that Russia will pay restitution? I mean, I don't think that anybody can really believe that, but that's the official line. But, the people in Denmark are not protesting. Now, they protested, and we were on a show about this, I think, that the Social Democrats lost the major election here, the parliament election, worse than ever in their history. They lost 100, the worst than 100, and mainly not because of the Ukraine war, but because welfare, just has really gone down. So the politicians, all of them, they want to say there's enough money for both welfare and the war. The people are not out in the streets like they are in Italy today. Again, in Italy, and Denmark has also tripled while they've tripled their GNP, they've also tripled the money for their own defense. They are now have women as a part of the draft. And who is behind that? And they went 3 times as many soldiers as they had before this war. The party that introduced the bill to have women be a part of the draft was the previous Communist Party, which now calls itself the Red and Green Party, and they say that they support 100% what Mette Frederiksen, the prime minister, has done to save Cuba. I mean, to save Ukraine. Now, I want to get to, I've talked to you about a whole week that we're still in of preparedness. No, yes, there's been this drone that there was 6 months ago, there was a supposedly drone attack or watching in many places over military bases and airports, and they closed them down for some hours. And it was an outrage. The Russian, well, they did an investigation to find out what kind of planes. And yesterday it was announced, as they announced on the media, that Denmark and Poland are doing these military exercises, and they say it's against Russia. They don't even make any qualms about it. But they also said in the same newscast that they haven't found any proof that Russia did it, that there were drones, and they were drones from Russia. But you're to believe it anyway. It's like, you're almost to believe, although they haven't gone into this in Denmark for a long time, that the Russians did Nord Stream, that they damaged, that they destroyed their own pipelines. I mean, it's just so absurd. And the last thing I'll get into about, how absurd their monies are is that Denmark is the first country that is accepted a Ukrainian corporation to come onto their territory and make weapons. And I think we talked about that also the last time. And that's this fire points and this this Mindich that I'm sure you've talked about many times, that he's the owner. Now it's come out finally in a Danish newspaper article, and I wrote to the author of it, the reporter, that the corruption case in Ukraine is a major scandal in Ukraine, and but it's not a major scandal in Denmark. But Denmark has paid $80 million to help start the factory to build solid rocket fuel, engine casings, and assembly for 3 kinds of missiles, 2 short and medium range, but the third is for Flamenco, which is the largest, the longest, 3,000 kilometers. They have hit some place in probably the military base or the bridge in Crimean. They say that in this newspaper piece that I'm taking from, where they're going to be building this rocket fuel and these other elements are right beside, a kilometer away from a major military base in Denmark, in Jutland in the west, which is the home of the F-35s, and they also have rather it's the home of F-16s, and they also have F-35s there. Now this factory is in production, and the first product will come out, they say, by the end of 26. So, I mean, the war is being lost by Russia, they say. At the same time, they're preparing for Russia to invade them. At the same time, they're preparing to continue the war for 2 years and helping to pay for this production and supporting Israel and supporting that Mindich is now in Israel. The newspaper reporter said to me, he didn't write that he went to Israel because he thought it was irrelevant, but he admitted to me in an email yesterday that, yes, he went to Israel. This is just some of what I could talk about for the next 2 hours, probably without having anything other than a glass of water.
Let me jump in.
Please do.
Aren't you scared beyond all belief that with the activity you just talked about, Denmark involved in creating missiles and solid fuel, etc., with this Flamingo missile that can strike 3,000 kilometers away and into Russia? You and I both know Russia is 10 to 15 years ahead of any place in the West. The United States is 10 to 15 years behind in terms of weapon and space and information technology behind Russia. What we're reading over here is there are conservative hardliners who keep talking about Russia's arsenal of non-nuclear weapons, like the Oreshnik, for example, and the Sarmat, which cannot be tracked, cannot be shot down. They're hypersonic. They have multiple warheads that are capable of being diverted to a number of different locations. And Russia has been telling the West, be careful, because we have this capability. And I just have to question, Ron, whether the people in the militaries, whether they be in Denmark, Finland, whether they be in Brussels or Berlin or Paris or London, they have to be completely delusional or stupid or ignorant to think that because of what they're doing, they are threatening the very existence of Russia. In fact, that is the stated goal of the United States, NATO, and the EU, to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia and to steal its resources. Aren't you scared to death that because of what the Denmark government is doing, that Russia with just one missile could really blow that shitty little country off the face of the earth? Aren't you scared? Oh boy. We're having internet problems tonight. I don't know if I'm even going out in this live stream. I was very interested to hear whether Ron personally is afraid because of what his country and other countries in the EU are doing. We were going to talk about Denmark supporting Israel and the genocide in Palestine. And I was very interested to hear from Ron whether the people in Denmark, whether the people understand and agree with what their country is doing. I asked the same question about friends in Europe. Are the people, the ordinary people from Spain to Finland, are they understanding? Are they in agreement with their government, their individual sovereign governments, but they're all controlled by the EU? Are they in agreement? No, I've lived in Europe. I studied in Rome many years ago, 1968 to 72. And that was a time before the EU, when all of the European countries were sovereign, were independent. Then they bought into this EU concept, one currency, no need for passports to go from one country to another. It sounded great. But what's evolved is a totalitarian, authoritarian government with Ursula von der Leyen acting like a tyrant. She's a warmonger. She's a Russophobe. I think she's a Nazi. Her father and grandfather were involved in Nazism. And it's really very frightening. We seem to have lost Ron. I hope that he's trying to reconnect. And I can see that some people are commenting that I'm still being seen and heard, and that something has happened on Ron's side. Maybe his internet connection is not stable. Sometimes I often wonder whether or not there's some kind of malicious intent, giving the content of what we're discussing, given the people that are part and parcel of my show. One of the other things that Ron wanted to talk about was Donald Trump's visit right now, a 2-day visit, Thursday and tomorrow, Friday, to China to meet with Xi Jinping. And my thoughts were this: when I saw the list of corporate CEOs, corporate financial interest, all the biggies, all the heavies from Silicon Valley, technology, I think there were a dozen of them listed that they were traveling with Trump on Air Force One to go meet with Xi Jinping. And when I saw that list, I immediately thought fascism is alive and well. Because, there are several definitions of fascism. And one of them is the union between the state and corporations. Mussolini liked to call it a corporatism, where the state and business and industry were united at the hip. And that's what it looked like when I saw the printout of everybody that went with Trump to China. I didn't see Rubio on the list, but I read later that he was also included. I'm sure China, if they even decided or wanted to engage with these corporate tycoons, I'm sure China, like Russia, probably had many very experienced top-level diplomats, including people from the financial sector. But I have a hard time believing that this show of American superiority in certain sectors was going to have any effect on China. I hope to do some coverage of this Trump trip to China, possibly over the weekend, to see how the whole thing ended, and to read the Chinese reports, newspaper accounts, and official printouts. It's going to be very interesting. My own personal opinion is Trump thought he could go to China after claiming that he won in this Israeli-U.S. unprovoked act of aggression against Iran. He thought he would be going there holding all the cards. But I read today that one of the things that Trump asked already, from what's being reported, is he basically begged with China to influence Iran in opening the straits. Meanwhile, Iran said Chinese ships are going through the straits without any problem. And yet, Iran has indicated it's the United States blockade that is prohibiting Iran from allowing other ships to freely pass through the straits. And Iran categorically said, we will not be influenced by any outside countries, powers, to influence what is best for our country and to influence or pressure us into making any kind of decisions that are not favorable to us. And so Trump, at least today, seems one of the first things that was on the agenda for him was to plead with China to influence Iran. And my question is, what did Trump promise China? It's very well known. There's a trade war going on between the United States and China. They're at odds in terms of this conflict in Iran. Both China and Russia are allies, have a great deal of investments in Iran, including intel, including military and satellite reconnaissance. So my question is, does Trump have any cards to play when he goes to China and he meets with Xi Jinping and these really brilliant, experienced diplomats and corporate and financial experts? I have a hard time believing that Trump is going to gain anything positive about this visit. Well, I'm really sorry that Ron was not able to check back in. I'm not seeing anything from him in my email. So I'm just wondering if his internet is completely inefficient, or if it's just, maybe it's down. I have no idea. So before I conclude, what I would ask all of you, if you enjoy this journalism that I've involved in, if you enjoy the guests that I have from around the world, from Russia, from the United States, then I ask you, please subscribe and like the show. I'd like you to know that 5 years ago, my original YouTube account with 16,000 followers, that was a lot going back 15 or 20 years, completely deleted by YouTube. Now I only have like 1,000 subscribers, and similar numbers on BitChute and Rumble, and also on my Substack channel. So I'm really asking for your help and your support to subscribe and to like these shows that I do almost 6-7 days a week. I also want you to know that I have, over 20 years, 3 major documentaries, hundreds of videos and podcasts now close to 760. I do not ask for money. I have never asked for money. I've never made a penny off of any of my work because I believe that everything I've done has been in the pursuit of truth. Everything I've done has been historically based and sound. And everything I've done, especially here in Russia, has been to show people what Russia and Russians are like, what Russian life is like, what politics is like, what the conflict in Ukraine has been like, and how the Russian people are reacting to all of this. And I believe that I just could not put a price on sharing this information with anybody and everybody that would listen. And I would like to say this in closing. I need your help, not your financial help. I'm retired. I'm living on a modest Social Security and a small pension from a few brief years of work in state government in the United States. I don't need financial help to do this. I do it all myself. I do the editing, I do the film work, I do the preparation. I'm basically been a one-person crew for the last 20 plus years. So all I ask is that you subscribe and you like the show to help me expand my audience and to share the type of journalism and reporting that I do from Russia that is not like anything else that's out there on the internet. So I know that Ron has not been able to come back. I want to thank him for the effort. We'll do it again. I want to thank those of you who have stayed with me. It turned into a monologue, but it was all springboarded by my dear friend Ron Ridenour. And as soon as he can reestablish a connection with the internet, we'll reschedule. So thank you all again. I want to mention one more thing. Not only do I do this show, Dateline News and Conversation, but I failed to mention that I do two other shows. I do a show entitled Did You Know This About Crimea and Russia? They're all videos, they're all interviews about Russia, Russian life, Russian traditions, Russian cultural events, and Russian history. These have been fascinating. It's called Did You Know This About Crimea? Did you know this about Russia? I've been doing another show. We first called it The Three Amigos. There's two other Americans living here, dear friends. And we did a number of shows where we were commenting on how we found life in Russia and Crimea, and probably too much on geopolitical issues and events. Well, I decided that the Three Amigos theme, with the three of us looking like we were Mexican, Mexican guitar players. And I just thought living in Russia, this didn't fit. So I redesigned the show and refocused it. And now it's called We Came, We Saw, We Stayed. So we're going to be sharing our views on, and I have some 55 or 60 individual topics to try to inform people who might be interested in coming to Russia as a tourist or even coming to Russia to live. Some 50 plus topics that anybody planning to come here really has to take into serious consideration. It's an invaluable resource. And what we hope to do is to share our own personal experiences with all of this, to share what our experiences are here in the Crimea and Russia in terms of daily life, in terms of shopping, in terms of the food. There's no GMOs here. It's all farm fresh in the markets. And then we have our supermarket chains, which are still GMO free. The food is healthy. We're going to talk about social benefits. We're going to talk about medical care. We're going to talk about emergency services. We're going to talk about the safety of Russia. There's hardly any crime anywhere, including Moscow. And so we just initiated this show last night. It will take place every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Moscow time, and that is noon Eastern time in the United States. So I just wanted to finish with that to let you know that this is not the only show that I do. And I hope that you will follow us in the future and help us grow our audience, not to make money, but to influence and educate people around the world. Thanks so much for sticking with me. We'll enjoy reading your comments, and we try to respond to them as much as we can.